In the beginning, God created relationships between God and angels, God and man, and between all of us. Through the love of God and the peace of Christ and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit, we are all interconnected. Come join Pastor Penny Schulz and Kristen Scharrenberg as scholars, counselors, travelers through the Holy Land, and warriors in Christ, while they explore the fascinating, the difficult, the obscurities, the oddities, and the hope of God's holy word. They will discuss what those scriptures mean to us and how living in the Spirit changes everything.
Hello, and welcome to
Live Life in the Spirit.
We are your hosts. I am Kristen Scharrenberg.
And I'm Pastor Penny Schulz.
We are so glad you took time out of your busy day to join us for some joy, some inspiration, and definitely some interesting, intriguing, out-of-the-box thinking. You can go back and watch or listen to our previous podcasts on our YouTube channel or the various podcast feeds like iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and many others. You can also check out our website at livelifeinthespirit.com. You can click on the tab of your choice, and that will take you directly to either the podcast, or our blogs. Be sure to catch up on our inspirational blogs while you're there, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on our newest content. This is the place where we're daring enough to tackle the tough issues that we face on a daily basis, ranging from the spiritual to the supernatural.
We will dig into the angelic realm, the little gods of this world, the Nephilim, the giants, dinosaurs, Bigfoot, UFOs, and aliens. As the late, great Dr. Michael Heiser says, if it's weird and in the Bible, you better pay attention, because it's in there for a reason. So where do we go for answers? And what does the Bible have to say? You know, all this is going to be discussed from a biblical, not a worldly perspective. Because
once you know, you can't unknow. So before we dive in, let's take just a moment to introduce ourselves.
So who's Kristen? Well, she's been working in the mental health field for 15 years. She's had her work cut out for herself ever since she met me. And she is definitely not the one you want to take to a don't laugh situation.
I've heard that more than once just this week. So who's Penny? She started out in the medical field, and then God moved her into the ministry over 24 years ago. I know, she doesn't look old enough to have been in ministry for that long.
I was 5 when I started.
Oh, that makes sense. She's been shepherding the lost ever since, and she's definitely had her work cut out for her since she met me.
We have done some pretty exciting things, and we have walked in the most amazing places. Wearing these shirts.
It's true.
It seems fitting for today's topic.
It does.
Get used to different. I wish that we could take some credit for coming up with the saying, but it comes from the Chosen series. That pretty much sums up both of us and our show. What we discuss on this platform is definitely different from what you will hear on most Sunday mornings.
True. So we are super excited today. One of our fellow adventurers in Israel has agreed to come on our show, Philip Pfanstiel of Oklahoma. He's been an educator for 18 years, teaching science in the public school system, and he also helped develop curriculum for the homeschool system. He has a BS in journalism and a master's in communication. Philip has debated and researched creation, evolution, and intelligent design theories. He has a passion for the obscure as well, and is a perfect guest for today's topic, dinosaurs, and where are they in the Bible?
All right, we are back again this week. Last week we had Philip Pfanstiel on, and he is a teacher who has been in the profession for over 18 years. He has a degree in both journalism and education. And he has been talking communication, and he has been talking about evolution and creation. We've been looking at the different aspects of the dinosaurs. Maybe the things that we've been told all along aren't exactly what we have learned. And what do we do with that? And how does that line up with the Bible? And does it, right? Yeah. So anyway, Philip, we're glad to have you back again. And we talked about a lot of really cool things last week, discovered some new things, and we're ready to just dive right in again this week. So thank you for agreeing to be on with us one more week.
Yeah. It's been a long week. Couldn't wait to get back here and be on it again.
about is we've always been told the dinosaurs were pre-man, pre-flood, pre all this stuff.
Millions of years old.
Millions of years old. But then we're looking at, because what we're finding through scientific research and stuff that's been unearthed, that maybe what we always thought about dinosaurs is not true. That they maybe existed while man existed, like you said, we're maybe on the boat, on the ark, and even after, and what has happened to them, and could that be some of the sightings? So tell us some of the findings that you have. Like, well, let's just start first with the fossilized of man's foot.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, that came up a couple times. So, yeah, we'll go straight to that.
What do you do with that?
Yeah. So, so some things that cause questions. So with evolutionary theory, as a biology teacher, I teach evolution. And occasionally when I was able to, I would teach, okay, well, here's some problems with it. And I think that's good science. You test things, you have a theory, okay, test it, try to bang it around a little bit and see if it holds up, right? That's good science, right? So here are some problems with the idea that fossils are millions of years old. First of all, you can get a fossil much quicker than that. So here is a boot that was discovered, a fossilized boot in West Texas. And they found the company that did the boot, made the boot. This boot was made in the 1950s. And this was found in the 1989, I believe. So this fossil, and the other interesting thing is the leg inside of it, fossilized. The boot did not. So some things will fossilize quicker than others. So in this case, we have a fossilized foot in a boot, and it is less than 40 years old, right? And there's other evidence of this. If you have running waters in caves, you'll find fossilized things in stalagmites and stalactites and all that. So you'll find you can fossilize things much quicker. You don't need millions of years to fossilize things. And here's the story of that limestone cowboy boot. I'll send this to you if you want to throw it up there. But so that's where some of the information there. Another thing that's interesting. I went here to Dinosaur Valley State Park in Glen Rose, Texas, and they have these footprints of dinosaurs in this layer of limestone that then got covered up. And there's a lot of them. You can actually swim in them. There's so many of them that they don't even protect them. You can go swim. So my kids were in some of these theropod dinosaur tracks. They were swimming in it. And this was found in that same area. And there's a creation museum down there that has some of this and some other evidence. And in this one, you have what looks like a theropod, a three-toed dinosaur, and a human footprint in the same fossil. And it looks, from my understanding, it looks like the human footprint was laid down first, and then the theropod kind of intruded into it. And so they've done, but any kind of evidence, this is where I get frustrated. Any kind of evidence that goes against, and we'll see this with the Ica stones, any kind of evidence that questions evolution, it must be wrong. So they've assumed the end of the discussion. We know the right answer is this. So anything that goes against it, and that's not good science. No. Good science, you take the evidence, you take and you follow where the evidence leads, not where your theory leads. Right. And so there's my little soapbox. So here is the so here's they've done an excavation, but you can look this up, and you'll get online the Delk print. You'll get some different. Some people say it's a hoax. Some people say but it's like, and the same thing with this next one. The next one is an Angkor Wat in Myanmar. There's this temple that was that people left the temple about 500 years ago. They built it, they left it, and the jungle reclaimed it. And then it was discovered recently, and so it's a big tourist attraction. Where in that on that temple complex there is this carving. So you can actually go and visit this, and there's places will tell you exactly where this is on the thing. That looks like a
Stegosaurus,
Stegosaurus. And some people say, no, it's obviously a rhino with some palm leaves behind it. Okay, maybe, but it's like, kind of looks,
like a stegosaurus to me.
It really does.
Yeah.
So what are you could see the head of a serpent above it. What are the other heads of animals around?
I don't know. I'm not an expert on Angkor Wat. I did last night when I was looking at some different pictures. Most of them are animals that we recognize. And this, you also find this in Babylon. In some of the things there, you'll find animals we do recognize, and then you'll find these things that look very much like dinosaurs or some kind of dinosaur. The most famous is the Chinese zodiac. The Chinese zodiac, you have the monkey, the dog, the rooster. You have 11 real animals, and then you have a dragon. Then of course that gets into some interesting things. Marco Polo, when he went to China in the 1300s, he wrote about that they had a dragon keeper as part of the royal procession, and they rode dragons out there. Now they probably weren't the big, fire-breathing dragons, but they were some kind of creature that he called a dragon.
What would your take be then on King Nebuchadnezzar when he stood up and on his palace and had kind of put God aside again and was prideful? I've created all this and this is all mine, and God strikes him, and it's interesting the way it talks about how he became like the beast of the field. Some people say, oh, he was just a cow. I don't think he was a cow. He was a wild beast. What kind of a wild beast? I've always wondered, because it's in there. I mean, okay, yeah. How many people has God turned from man to beast? And then
not many.
I mean, they will say, I know you'll have people say, well, he just lost his mind and he became deranged and then he got his mind back. I don't think so. I think there was more to it than that, or they wouldn't have had that in there.
Right.
Like Dr. Michael said.
I don't know the scientific, but I think it's prophetically, it's some foreshadowing. Because so you have Babylon, and the Bible talks about Babylon, it brings it all in Revelation. Babylon the Great, right. Babylon has fallen. And then you also have the dragon and the beast.
And the beast. Right.
Yeah, so you have this foreshadowing of the Babylon, when it's an arrogance and pride, it turns into a beast. And that's what we get in the end times. We have
and that's exactly what happens with the beast. So,
but then it gets humbled, and then when it humbles itself, then God can redeem it. And I think same thing for us is, when we humble ourselves, God can.
Right.
But I don't know the scientific. I don't know if you want to go the Bigfoot route. That's some interesting.
Well, I don't know. I have no clue what he would have been turned into. I just think there's more to it than he just lost his mind, or that he turned into a cow, because it said he turned into a beast. And I think there's, Well,
it wasn't one of the guys on the Zoom call. I won't say his name because of the, but he was talking about transmogrification, right?
Yeah, interesting.
That is outside of my realm. I don't know much about that. So, but that's interesting. So I got a couple other things we want me to show you here. So
we're talking now, bringing this up to, dinosaurs, obviously, to support the case that they were on the boat because they were after the boat. We have dinosaur prints on top of human prints, which means that they had to have been here. And now we've discovered soft tissue. Is that where you're going with on this?
I wish I can find that real quick, but I was going like, here's a picture. It claims to be in Tombstone, Arizona. And we do find a lot of fossils of quetzalcoatlus and birds, pterodactyls in the American West, Southwest, all the way from the Ohio Valley out to Arizona and California. This is a picture. I can't say for sure this is accurate or authentic, but it hasn't been proved inauthentic. It's one of these, okay, is that doing some guys in cosplay and they did this? Maybe, but it looks very, very interesting. How many
pictures of people with giants that all got taken out too?
Right.
There's no pictures anymore. It's all fake. Yeah.
Right. And no one is going to, with the means to research it, is going to really research it, because what if they prove it's true? So they just dismiss it and say, oh, it's got to be fake. But there's some interesting things. There's stories of Buffalo Bill Cody, He wrote about these birds out in Tombstone area. And then you get into the Native Americans here in Oklahoma. We have the Thunderbird. And actually, I think I have that on a different screen here. So we have the Thunderbird. So you have the Thunderbird throughout Native, not just one tribe. You have it, the Cherokee. You have it across from the Ohio all the way to Arizona. You have these ideas of these huge birds that would come out of the sky and take people and take them away and eat them. And so they had these.
But if it was a pterodactyl, it would not be that mythical.
Yes, and so this is so we find here's where your legends and your fossils collide. Mm-hmm. We have the fossils of these birds or dinosaurs in Arizona, in Colorado, in Oklahoma. We have these fossils, and then the Native Americans that lived in the same area have these legends of these huge birds that would come out of the sky and consume people, consume cattle, or whatever they had. So it's an interesting combination. Yeah, the one you were mentioning, the T-Rex soft tissue, and this was a interesting one. I'll give you the overview, but it's basically University of North Carolina. This evolutionist, researcher, paleontologist. She goes out, I want to say Montana, and she's working with T-Rex, or she finds this fossil, and she claims that there's soft tissue in the fossil. And when she publishes this in Science, a reputable peer-reviewed journal, the mainstream loves peer-reviewed, but they'll only review the things they want to see in their journal. So it's a club. Yeah.
So when did she find this? I mean, would this been what gave rise to Jurassic Park, or did she find it after Jurassic Park?
I want to say this was only 10, 15 years ago. 2007. So I could find that out for you, but
well, I was just curious if that's what helped keep, or I should say, we always say Hollywood tells you just enough truth, and that was at the first Jurassic Park. That was what that was all about, was the mosquito and the amber,
the DNA from the mosquito.
But if you had actual blood here, yeah.
Yeah, so when she came out with this, when she published her findings, she was ridiculed. Everybody was like, no, that can't be. She's faking it, The soft tissue. Well, this is where it got interesting, because the evolutionists, when she supported her findings, she actually had the samples. She could back it up. And when she did, people had to retract and be like, oh, you're right. You did find T-Rex soft tissue. And then the question, and this is what I found very fascinating, the question was, how did it survive 65 million years? That was the question. The better question would be, how long did it survive?
Right.
But they have to have it 65 million years old, because that's when all the dinosaurs went extinct with the Yucatan Peninsula asteroid impact. But the better question is, how long did it survive? Because what if there were T-Rexes living, not a lot of them, but after the flood in the last 1,000 years, or 2,000 years, whatever, some of this tissue could survive. We've found soft tissue in mummies that we know are about 3,000 to 4,000 years old. We find some soft tissue, so we know, okay, it can survive, 3,000 or 4,000 years, but 65 million years is a big reach. But they never ask those questions. The questions are geared. So, and then that leads to my favorite one, ichthyostones. So the ichthyostones, these are fascinating. So if you do some research on Wikipedia and you Google ICA stone, and these are stones that were found in Peru. Now the story goes, you can kind of see here, I'll go to another one. They have some interesting carvings on them. So this one here is looks like a human riding a triceratops, right? And then here's another one. I have actually this one. It looks like a T-Rex eating a human. Mm-hmm. Now, interesting thing that has these circles on it. We'll come back to that. So you have these ichthyostones, and the story goes, and I was just confirming this last night, but basically these were found in Peru. They were sold to a doctor down there. He actually he got one of these and he started collecting more, and then he found other people. And there's this farmer who said he had found a whole bunch in a cave, and so he sold this guy thousands of these stones, and some of these stones show. So here's a replica of this one here. Some of these stones show what appears to be, dinosaurs and humans, right? But the collector, this doctor, collected 15,000 of them, and some of them are small, some much bigger, but 15,000 stones. And the conspiracy is that or the debunking the conspiracy is these were all hoaxes.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is they 400 years ago they talked about these stones in the Spanish Chronicles as they're colonizing Peru, the conquistadors, and they talked about these stones. So we know these stones. They recorded things on them, and so we know some of them are authentic. And then this guy finds this farmer finds thousands of them, sells it to this doctor, and then later the Peru authorities come and they question the farmer, and the farmer says he made them all up. He made them all. And so that's where you'll see on most sites is like, oh, it's a hoax. The farmer admitted it. Well, here's the problem. You think legal. If you sell antiquities, you get in trouble. You get in trouble with this in Israel. If you sell an antiquity, you could go to jail. You can look at serious jail time. So this farmer, he recants. He says, I made them, because if he says, no, I sold them, he's going to go to jail. And I don't know how well the Peru prisons work, but I'm not thinking very well. So he basically said, yeah, I made them all up. But the other interesting thing is, if you were to make up a whole bunch of these stones, and they can't really date them very well because the rocks are old, but the engravings, you can't really date the engraving very well. But if you were to make these for tourists, like when we went into Jerusalem, if you're going to sell these to a whole bunch of tourists, what would all 15,000 of those rocks look like? What do you think?
About the same. We'd have several things on it, and that would be multiples of the same thing, I would think.
I don't think I would have circles on it because that looks weird.
Yeah. Which is interesting when you get back to the T-Rex DNA and soft tissue. There's some of the things that are found on these stones that have proven correct. Like the Apatosaurus, there's like some of the head on one Bronchiosaurus was wrong. They put the wrong fossil, the wrong head on the wrong thing, and this had it correct. Not this one, but these Ica stones. And I think the circles, I can't be sure on this, but I think the circles have been proved that, yes, T-Rexes did have circles on their body, and you would not know that. And these were found or made in the 1960s. So, and the other thing, just from a tourist, if I were making stuff for tourists to buy, and as a professional buyer of random junk at tourist shops, I would make all 15,000 stones with dinosaurs, because that's what's going to sell, right?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, most of the stones don't have dinosaurs. I don't know the percentages, but like 95, 98% of them are just ordinary life, flowers and fish and ordinary life, and then 2% or somewhere in that have exotic animal, or animals like dinosaurs or things. And so it's like,
I was just gonna say, even just logistically, you said that there was like 15,000 of them or something,
right?
1,500 or 15,000?
15,000.
That's a lot for one man to make.
There's no way one guy could make all those,
right?
And have them all be different and have them be that precise and not sloppy. And
right.
But here's the other thing too. You said that, we already have the temple that had the Stegosaurus with that in the middle. That wasn't new. I mean, this goes back how far? So we already know the people were doing that. And being that in Peru, of course, this is going to be a whole nother show, but we'll get into the skulls, the red skulls
the
down
crystal,
in Peru, the Nephilim that are not human.
And the Stargates down there, and the I think Timothy Alberino I'm going to try to go to Israel next year. I'm going to see if I can make it. But Timothy Alberino, he did a lot of study of the Neolithic architecture down there. How the rocks look like they were poured in place, and you came and put like paper through between the rocks. So just some crazy engineering. But yeah, so Peru has a lot of interesting stuff, and so these things, of course, you have the Nazca lines that in Peru where you can only see them from above on the ground. They don't look like anything. If you get above, you can. And so, what was looking at them from above? What were they? But so there's a lot of interesting questions with Peru. But yeah. So that let's see. Let's see if there's any other. I have a couple other things, but yeah, these are just some evidences for humans. So again, the Thunderbird here in Oklahoma, we have the 45th Infantry Division. They have the Thunderbird. Here's a Cherokee Thunderbird. So,
what's your opinion on the Phoenix? That's another mythical creature, but there's a lot of mythical creatures. Centaur, thank you, and Pan, half man, half goat. A lot of that stuff. Where does Phoenix land in that, or would Phoenix be more like the Thunderbird?
Yeah, so that gets into, and I'm not an expert on this at all, but I've heard this, so you may have heard the same thing. You can, that after the Nephilim after the Watchers had the Nephilim with the women, they were put in Tartarus, and they're punished, and Enoch talks about that. But then, so the other Watchers or the other angels are like, well, we want to do something, we got to do something. But we can't do that because then we'll go to Tartarus. So then they started messing with animals. And so they started doing experiments with animals, which I think my daughter and I are really into this, into like UFO stuff, like the cattle mutilation out in the Western United States, where you'll have cows turned inside out. It's become such a joke now that you'll have movies where the cow gets sucked into the spaceship. Right. But, well, what are they doing? What's going on with those cows? Well, I think they're trying to find a way. This gets into, we are the temple of the Holy Spirit, right? Mm-hmm. And we are a meat temple, but we invite him in. He's not going to, so we invite the Holy Spirit in. He fills us, right? So we become filled with the Spirit, right? Well, the spirits, the unholy spirits, there you got the Holy Spirit. These unclean spirits, they want a host.
Right. They need a host.
And the problem with humans,
bodysuit.
yeah, they want a host, but we can kick them out anytime because we have free will. But they want a host. So what if you were to make, this is where Bigfoot, cow mutilations, what if you could make a host that would do what you want it to do? It's in this physical world, but it doesn't have free will, so it can't kick you out. Right. So now you have a host. And that's what I think they're doing. That's good. But so with Phoenix, you could have this kind of mutilation where they're and you see this in ancient mythology with like Anubis and Minotaurs. You see this combination of human and animal hybrids. So it has human attributes, but also animal attributes, and it's an abomination because God didn't create it.
Right.
So therefore, it's not protected by God. Because we are protected. That's why you don't want to mess with your DNA, because we're made in the image of God. Once you start messing with that stuff, anyway, that's some random down the rabbit hole stuff.
Interesting. So, you talked a lot about when evidence is brought up that defies evolution or changes, what the current theory of choice is in the scientific community. So, why are they holding on so tightly? What are your thoughts? I mean, I know I have thoughts. Why do you think they're holding on so tightly to this theory that clearly isn't entirely supported by the very science they're saying it backs it up?
Well, I think we're seeing this really clearly in the last 3 or 4 years. Is the truth doesn't really matter to them. The truth is more what will people believe and what is the current thing, right? Because truth can be tested. I used to do a little YouTube, truth can be tested. Do we test things now? No, we just repeat them. We repeat. It's propaganda. You repeat a lie often enough, it becomes accepted. And so with evolution is a religion. That's why I try to argue with some people I worked with, is that we were teaching evolution. I'm like, well, let me teach some of the controversy. I wasn't going to teach creation, but I wanted to kind of introduce intelligent design, which was actually a theory that was competing with evolution at the time. William Paley and others, if you see a watch on the ocean, on the seashore, and it has design and functionality and purpose, something designed it, right? But if we can go evolution, so I think they're holding on to this for a couple reasons, because it disconnects people from God.
Right.
If we are an accident,
Right.
but it also removes people's purpose. But yeah, so if evolution is the current thing, right, and any people that question it, anybody that tries to test it, are excluded, and we see that like with the COVID thing. Anybody that would question it was demonetized, was kicked off platforms, was suppressed. And I think this idea has been going back for a while. Anybody that questions evolution, it's like, and even evolutionists that point out, hey, wait, there's a problem here. They're evolutionists, but they're like, hey, there's a problem. They're like the lady with the T-Rex soft tissue.
They're like kicked out of the club.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's a self-regulating cult, if you will. It's a religion.
Well, and I would say it points to the spiritual realm, the fallen realm being, like you said, they want to keep us from God. And so if they can keep a theory out there that says God's not the intelligent creator, it's not by design that way, and it is all by random accident or terrible song, then I just think it just shows the battle that we're fighting on every level, everywhere.
Well, but the narrative is still there, so we can't question the narrative, and that's sad. It's sad that and I think this is what, not to preach, but this is what Paul talks about in Romans 1. They exchange the truth for a lie. They worship and serve the creation more than the creator. And once you get your eyes off the creator and you start worshiping the creation, you get deceived. You're led away.
So for our listeners out there who are wondering, they've heard all this information. This might be completely new information to them. They've still always been under the impression that everything was millions and billions of years ago, and hopefully
Evolution
they've
was
heard
fact, and
hopefully they've heard of a flood. But so they're hearing this for the first time, that, oh my gosh, there's fossils that have been seen that are newer, and there's soft tissue. What do we do with that? And now there's carvings and rocks and all this stuff depicting dinosaurs with humans. And how does that all fit into the Bible? We've talked about Leviathan. We've talked about many of the different creatures in the Bible. We didn't really mention the Loch Ness Monster at all. I've always said, ever since I was young, that I thought that was probably a throwback. I mean, it is probably from the dinosaurs. We don't know what all is living under the ocean.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Probably a plesiosaur. And there's evidence that those survived. Yeah. A plesiosaur. That's what the Loch Ness Monster, if it's still alive, it's probably a plesiosaur. And there's been some evidence for that too. Like the Japanese pulled up a big sea creature in the 1950s.
If you think of the depths of the ocean, there's no way we have any idea what's down there. And a flood's not going to kill off stuff that live in the water. So.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me on your podcast these 2 weeks. I enjoyed, of course, getting to meet you guys in Israel and continue our friendship and these interesting discussions. So thank you. I'm going to repeat what other people have said. The people that get into this, they say, hey, you can trust the Bible. You can trust God, and there's reasons to believe. So that's one of their taglines for one of these ministries. But I think it's true, and you shouldn't be bullied. If you feel like, okay, I believe God, I trust God, I believe the Bible, I don't have all the answers. This is what we saw in Israel. We haven't answered every archaeological question, but every single time they go into a ruin and they find another rock, it just confirms the Bible.
Right.
So there's so much evidence confirming the Bible, and I think when you really get into the science and really understand it, this stuff reinforces the Bible. There's still questions. We haven't figured everything out. But I think if you start with the assumption, this is where in my life, that the Bible is true, that God is honest. He's told us the truth. Now, our understanding of it is limited. We see through the glass dimly. We don't get everything. But if you start with God is faithful, God is true, and let that illuminate your life, then everything's going to kind of fall in place at the right time. So that's what my encouragement is. Start by trusting in God, and then books, and then also question and explore things, and you'll find it confirms the Bible. So.
Yep. And all those weird things, those passages you wondered about before, all of a sudden start making a little more sense.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No,
Thank
you're
you.
fine. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, ladies.
But after stretching our minds so much and digging in deep to all that, I don't know about you, but I think I need a little break.
I think so too. I think it's time for a joy break.
'Cause it's
Joy.
so-
Bah humbug break is what I call it. The bah humbug.
Well, so after all of that,
Meat and potatoes.
meat and potatoes, literally big meat and potatoes. We're talking dinosaurs.
That's
big
right.
Barbecue.
Big barbecue.
Yeah, it's time for
A joy,
Joy
break. And I'm going to apologize ahead of time because we wanted jokes on dinosaurs today. And they're really cheesy, but we'll do our best to add in a little bit of additional humor in any way we can. Why wouldn't the T-Rex get out of bed?
I don't know.
He was still dino snoring.
That is because his arms are too short to his arm.
Yeah, see? She wrote better ones. Scientists recently discovered a new dinosaur that was very intelligent. They named it Thesaurus. I know, it's terrible. What do you get when dinosaurs crash their cars?
I don't know.
Tyrannosaurus Rex.
That would be Rex.
Why can't the T-Rex clap its hands?
Because they're too small.
I knew you were, because it's extinct.
Is it?
Oh, that's a good one.
Because the soft tissue is in the wrong spot.
That's right. That's right. Well, because it's a teenage, it's an adolescent. They're not going to clap.
That's right. They'll just
They
roll their eyes.
Oh, here you go. What do you get when you cross a dinosaur with a firework? Dynamite.
No, that was JJ that used to say that, wasn't it? Dynamite.
Might have been.
I think so, maybe not. That's dating me.
What did Rex say to Woody after eating a toy? You've got a friend in me.
I was going to say, hey, bullseye, come on over.
What do you call a dinosaur that never gives up? A triceratops.
I don't know if we can use any of these.
Do you know how long dinosaurs lived?
No, I do not, Kristen. How long did dinosaurs live?
The same as short ones. Yes! I finally got her to laugh at one cheesy one.
I think we had a joke like that on the trip to Israel. I remember sitting behind Lynn and Robbie laughing at something remotely close to
Oh,
that.
that's true. Well, let's wrap up this fabulous joy break and look for another one. What makes more noise than a dinosaur?
I don't know, Kristen. What makes more noise than a dinosaur?
2 dinosaurs! And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a wrap on the joy break. Oh, well. The one funny joke, and it's not even going to work. Because no one will know why it's funny.
So as you can tell from the last 2 joy breaks, actually we do have some really good content coming up, but I do know that that is going to run out. So we encourage our listeners that if you have stuff that can actually be on air, that is very funny, please send it to us. You can email it to us or livelifeofthespirit@gmail.com. And we would love to take your comments. We would love to take your jokes, your funny stories.
You can go to our website, livelifeinthespirit.com, and go to the Contact Us and just submit it through our Contact Us link.
Yep. So we encourage you to do that.
That'd be great. Because clearly we need help if this is what we're left with.
Now we're going to get into
What do you do with that?
All right, so we've been talking to Philip Pfanstiel now for 2 weeks in a row. And this week is really exciting because now we have evidence of what do you do with that?
Right.
There's a lot of things. What do you do when things now don't match what we've always been told?
That's right.
You know, just like, how phenomenal is that they have found a dinosaur footprint, and below that is a footprint of a human.
Right. That's definitely outside of any box I've ever learned in.
Yeah. The land before time, the land of the lost.
Right.
I mean, we don't think of, well, we've been told the dinosaurs died off long before humans came.
The Flintstones must have had it right all along.
They did.
Well, and the soft tissue, the fact that soft tissue has been found, that is mind-blowing. And the fact that scientists are instead of asking, how old is it? Well, how did that survive for millions of years? Well, it didn't, because it can't. That, I don't know, I just thought that was amazing that they found.
They should have been asking, how old is it?
Right.
Well, it's Mary Schweitzer, a molecular paleontologist at North Carolina State University, who actually discovered the soft tissue preserved inside the leg of an adolescent T-Rex. And it was unearthed just right up here in Montana.
I wonder how she knew it was an adolescent.
I don't know. Maybe she tried to nail Jello to it.
Could be.
Well, and then in 2007, it was Dr. Schweitzer and her colleagues that analyzed the chemistry of that T-Rex proteins that was found in there. And they found that the proteins really did come from the dinosaur's soft tissue.
That's so cool.
And the tissue was collagen. That's how we knew it was adolescent, because if it had been older, it had been bone on bone.
That's right.
Maybe titanium.
That's right.
So we have now soft tissue of something that means it had to have been alive with not terribly long ago.
Right.
We're talking hundreds of years ago, or
Thousands. I think Philip said that they'd found in some of the research he'd seen soft tissue from other organisms 3,000 to 4,000 years ago, maybe at most.
Maybe. Okay, that makes sense. But we're not talking tens of thousands or millions of years ago.
And there's other amazing examples that we brought up today too.
Well, and we have just right here in Nebraska, you know, there's a whole herd of the little elephants, the prehistoric elephants, the graveyard. Are they really as old as what they have written down as being 1.2 million years ago? Well, no, if this is found in Montana, and it's like 4,000 years old, maybe 5, then maybe we're looking a little closer.
For sure.
At that. So then we have more evidence, as we looked at in Cambodia at Angkor Wat Temple.
That's where that little dinosaur carving was in that huge temple, right? Yeah. How would they have known what dinosaurs were?
They didn't, and yet it is a perfect replica of a Stegosaurus. There's no way that they would have known the Stegosaurus. And it's in the center, if you notice around that ring, and that's what we were looking at. There were different animals. One was a serpent. But if it was in the center, that meant it was important.
That's right.
And I wonder if they were worshiping it, or why it was within that temple.
Well, and you know, that was one thing that we didn't talk about, but we might at some point in time delve into a little bit more. That when we all talked about, Philip mentioned the whole concept of maybe dinosaurs, dragons, are they something to do with the fallen realm and like the evil version or the evil side of things, or they've been utilized by the fallen realm. So
right, and that's true. You know, after messing with people, they started messing with animals, and to what extent?
Right.
Yes, which ones were of God and which ones were not God. Yeah. So when you see that and you first look at that, I wonder how many people realize right off. But what did the scientists try to say? Oh, it's just a hippopotamus. It's
and there's palm fronds behind it. Okay. That's what I lived in Florida. Palm fronds.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no. It looks just like a stegosaurus.
Well, and then those ichthystones, those were fascinating.
Oh my gosh,
that was so neat.
That was unreal. I mean, you have one of a guy riding a triceratops.
Right. Yeah.
These things are old.
Right.
You know, and even if that guy said that, well, we know that there's no way that guy made them, because you can't make 15,000 of them.
No.
And if you were gonna do it and you were gonna fake it, well, even like Philip said, you're gonna want to fake what? The ones with the dinosaurs to try to sell?
Right, that's what people would want.
And that was less than 5%
right.
of what was drawn on. But you have literally a guy riding a triceratops, and then you have the T-Rex lifting up this guy.
I think they were dancing.
This human lunch. Yeah, maybe the guy was his pet. I don't know.
Could be.
But how would they know what these things look like? I mean, unless it actually existed, because they didn't have textbooks back then.
No, they did not. No, not at all.
To draw from. Or the really cool one of the cave painting and drawing of the Brontosaurus.
Oh,
and it was in
definitely.
perfect proportion of what one would have looked like that had what? A tail of
A cedar.
Yeah, and the long neck. And
It's
again,
just, there's
how would
just
they
too
know?
much evidence. Too much evidence.
Right.
And fascinating evidence.
And fascinating evidence. Well, and then as he showed, I just love this picture, because, okay, so we don't know if this is true or doctored. However, we also know that there are many, many photos of giant human remains that have been photographed, and immediately the photos were snatched. And this is from Tombstone, Arizona.
And a pterodactyl.
Yeah.
That's really kind of cool.
It is. It's very cool. Which then makes you wonder, Arizona and you got Oklahoma, these things are kind of regional, really. And you have the myth of the Thunderbird. The Thunderbirds were ginormous birds as well.
Absolutely.
And it's like, what?
I guess I never really put a lot of thought into where that would have come from, but all of the myths, all of the stories, all of the legends had some foundation in truth.
Right. Or the phoenix, and that's in Arizona, you know, the rise of the phoenix.
That's right.
The big bird. Or you look at the totem poles. And what is the Thunderbird? It's of the totem pole, the Asherah pole. The Bible talks about this stuff. Why? And they weren't supposed to worship them. Well, what were they doing? Were they worshiping Thunderbird, the phoenix, the who knows?
Dinosaur, the dragon, any of the above?
Yeah. That's a lot of stuff to think about.
It is.
And it rocks your world. I don't know about you, but we never saw the picture
No.
of the pterodactyl when I was in school. That never came up.
No, not once.
And we didn't talk about a lot of the different possibilities
No.
or what had been found.
Oh, no, they didn't bring up any science, which granted when I was in school, some of this hadn't been found yet, but some of it had,
Oh yeah, I mean like the soft tissue, that definitely had.
Well, and the fossilized boot, they found that in '89, so.
Right, and like you said, here's the thing, when evidence is found, or like that picture, maybe the picture isn't real, but they haven't even tried to see if it is or not, because if it shows out to be true, like they pretty much think, that would completely kill their narrative of what they have been telling us all along.
Right, and so they, and I know that's a big collective word, but they want the narrative to stay the same. They have an agenda, they have reasons for us to believe that, and I just think it's just another example of, and we talked about this a little bit with Philip, that the spiritual world is influencing constantly. Because if we don't have the creation theory, if we can contradict things and keep out things that contradict what we're telling everybody, then we can keep God out.
That's right. And that's really ultimately what they've been trying to do. Shove God out of everything. Shove him out of the schools, shove him out of, and it's replacement theory is really what it's come about. Well, and you know, we know too, that even growing up when we were studying a lot of this, that there were multiple scientists who came up with theories that it was all based on false reasoning, false theories of somebody else who admitted to it. And yet instead of it stopping right there, it didn't. It just kept going. So you have all these theories out there that are based completely on false
narratives and false evidence.
We're going to look at that. And how does this all work into? So I know we were talking about dinosaurs because that's one thing that everybody knows about.
Right.
It's tangible. We have fossils. We can go look at it. We can see it. We can know it. We can touch it. But maybe that's not what we always thought is really the case. So if it's that way with something that's in front of us, that we can touch, see, smell, taste, well, we don't want to taste it.
No, not unless you're at the barbecue.
That's true.
The Jewish legend.
It would be one big egg. Feed the multitude.
That could feed the multitudes.
But if it's that way with something like a dinosaur, what about the other things in the Bible? Or the things that we know of, but we don't know how that fits in, and it goes against what we've always been brought up.
Or what we're being told today, or I guess just starting the conversation with being willing to question. Because that's really what we are called to do, is read the scripture for ourselves and have the relationship with God and question. Okay, God, this is what I'm reading, and this is what the world is telling me.
Where's the truth?
Right.
Well, and we're not saying that everything that we brought up here is gospel or truth by any means, but it's just the, oh my gosh, okay, what do you do with that?
Right.
How many times in your life have you run across something that goes against everything you've ever known? And hence why the big phenomenon with ghosts and different things like that, because you could say, oh, they don't exist, but what happens when you run into something that you cannot explain and it rocks your world? It rocks your world so much that you find yourself reeling, you know?
And that does happen. And it happens in all different areas in all different ways, and probably lots of different people will experience it. It might be in something more academic, it might be in something more spiritual, it might be in something more relational, it just will depend on what it is, but what do you do with it?
Exactly. And for some people, when they run into things that shake them to the core, they can completely walk away from the faith, or they can dig in more, research more, want to know, it can ignite a burn inside that they want to know more, or they can just laugh it off and walk away and go, whatever.
I'm going to stick with what I already know. I'm going to go with the
norm, even if it's not correct, because it's too much work to.
Makes me uncomfortable. Seems like a lot of effort. I might have to change my thoughts on some other things.
Right. Well, we're going to be exploring a lot more of these ideas, concepts in later episodes. Which brings us up to the fallen realm, really, and that's kind of why we wanted to give this basis with the dinosaurs first, and the Nephilim. They're real, and it is literally in the scriptures, but it's amazing how, because one person was uncomfortable with that thought and changed one word, that an entire chunk has been removed from most people's knowledge or knowing. But not in the Jewish community, not in the people that still read from the old Hebrew. It is very much real.
Or the people that would still read the non-canonical books of the Bible. And recognize that there's important information there that was recognized by Jesus and the disciples and the apostles and Jews today. And
so here's the thing, you can get online. In fact, the podcasts that we're competing against, blurry creatures, we're competing against noises in the night or whatever. I mean, there are so many ghost hunters and all these other shows that are booming in the phenomenon because people are searching, they're seeking, they know that things are out there, but they're looking for explanations. The problem is, if you've ever watched any of those or listened to them, I'm thinking like ghost hunters and stuff, they never really come across much of anything. It's all suspense, and they leave you with nothing.
Right.
But the Bible tells us exactly what is real and what is not. And the Bible talks about witches. It talks about ghosts. It talks about a lot of
things.
Well,
Well, so much that I did not pick up when I read the Bible growing up. And it was certainly not preached at on Sunday mornings until recently. Present company excluded. Oh, and even just all of we've talked about this a little bit, Revelation. I think it was almost like the Bible stopped just before Revelation, and the story of Jesus ends with the resurrection. None of the stuff that happens after that, or the fact that he's coming back and we need to be ready for that, none of that was...
And it's getting less and less. They'll focus a little bit on Acts. You know, feel good, that's why we have the church. But I mean, they don't dig in to Acts and what that really means and how that really does hook up with Revelation. And why do you need to know Revelation? Because that's ultimately what we're in this for, is Jesus is coming back. And guess what? It's full of dragons. It's full of Leviathan. It's the chaos dragon that we talked about at the beginning of Genesis. At the beginning of creation that God separated to start it all. It is all there.
And it's all important.
It's all important, and why we need to get this out. You know, and while this is the bizarre and the oddities, the difference with our podcast, our show, compared to others, is we give you the hope.
Right.
So there is all this stuff. Okay, it's shaking my world, it's rocking my world, but God still knew about it. He's just now letting us discover it.
Right.
And same way with, we are in those end times. The day of the Lord is coming sooner than not.
Right.
Do we know the day? No, we don't. But it is.
But we know we're meant to be ready for it to happen at any point.
And so, if it's things like this that we can use to talk to other people, to get their attention, to pique their curiosity, to reel them in, harness them in, then we can share the gospel message and we can tell them, why does this matter? Well, guess what? And we know the person who created all of this. And we know the person who's in control. And guess what? We know the end of the book. We know who wins.
Spoiler alert!
That's right. So even though there's all this going on and stuff that may be uncertain, the one thing that is certain is Jesus is still King of Kings, Lord of Lords. And he is coming back not on a brontosaurus, but on a white horse.
That's right. Although that would be a great image.
Jesus on
a brontosaurus.
Yeah, that would change that whole...
Yeah, probably not quite as regal.
Yeah, I was going to say, I like horses better than this.
I'm with you. But dinosaurs have been fun to talk about for today.
That has been. So, hopefully we've given you some food to chew on, some things to think about, maybe a little research to dig in on.
That's right. So the reason for our show is that we realize that you can't make an informed decision unless you have the correct information and all of the information. And remember, once you know, you can't unknow. So this next week, we continue to challenge you to get used to different, and remember to find ways to look at how are you living life in the Spirit. Bye.